ARIA Hidden hides text and elements from screen readers. So you can have a piece of text or elements that is visible for the user, for a sighted user, but it is going to be invisible for the screen reader. Let me show you an example. Right here we have this piece of text that is called Queen Duck. Now let's try to test it with our screen reader.
Index.html Google Chrome, document, Queen Duck.
So the screen reader has said Queen Duck, which is the text on the screen. But let's say that we want to leave this piece of text for the sighted users, but we want to hide it for the screen readers. To do that, we need to use ARIA Hidden. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go where the paragraph is, and I'm going to type ARIA Hidden, and I'm going to give it a value of true. And if I save it, you can see that we can still see the text, but the screen reader is not going to be able to read it aloud. So let's add another element there so we can test. And let's say this element, let's add another paragraph that says the fish is ready. Okay. Now let's start our screen reader.
The fish is ready.
Okay. See how the screen reader is focusing the fish is ready, but if I am pressing the arrow key up,
the fish is ready.
It is not focusing on the Queen Duck text. So I'm trying to select Queen Duck, but I'm not able to. Okay, now let's say that we want Queen Duck to be read aloud by screen readers. To do that, we have two options. First, either we change the value of the ARIA Hidden to false, which will make this element being read aloud by the screen reader. Let's test again. For this, I'm going to press Insert plus S.
The fish is ready.
Okay, so this is the down key. Now I'm pressing the up key.
Queen Duck.
And now Queen Duck is being read. Another option we have is to just remove the ARIA Hidden at all. So if we remove ARIA Hidden, then the default is going to be undefined, which will leave the element up to the browser whether they want to read it or not. So I'm selecting it with the screen reader, and if I had my screen reader's voice on, it's going to be read aloud. Now let me show you a more practical example. ARIA Hidden is often used when you want to create graphic links and you don't want the images to be read aloud. In this case, I have an SVG icon and I have a link that says Facebook. So if I don't add ARIA Hidden, then it is possible that some screen readers or some SVGs, a combination of screen readers and SVG icons, are going to be read aloud. For example, the screen reader might say triangle or circle or path. They sometimes announce SVG icons, so to make sure that it doesn't happen, you can add ARIA Hidden True. Another use case for ARIA Hidden True for SVGs is for narrator on Windows. When it is on scan mode, it can select the SVG inside the picture, inside the link. That's why ARIA Hidden hides it completely from the screen reader as if it's not really there. ARIA Hidden can have three values: true, false, which basically will show the element up for the screen, which is a default, and undefined. Undefined is when you remove the attribute, and it's up to the browser whether to display it or not. I want to show you a more practical example of when to use ARIA Hidden. It is often used when you have elements that are hidden, but not actually. So if you hide elements with display none, then they're going to be hidden from both sighted users and the screen readers. However, if you use some tricks like opacity 0, which basically makes an element invisible, it is still going to be accessible to the screen reader because the element is not hidden from the user agent. And we're only hiding it visually. Same thing is with absolute positioning. For example, if you have absolute positioning and you have left minus 1,000,000 pixels, this is often used for slide out menus. Okay, so let me show you an example. I have right here, I have this button, and the button is show temperature tomorrow. Let's pretend that we have a website for the weather, and we have a special button that when you press it, it shows you the temperature tomorrow. Right here, I have my class that has the temperature that is for tomorrow, which is going to be 68 Fahrenheit. Now, you can't see it because I have hidden it using opacity 0. And the reason I did that is because I want to animate it. And display none and visibility hidden does not allow animation. So if I press it, I get this nice animation that is, just nice. Anyways, Now let me scan the website using NVDA.
Index.html.
Okay, so NVDA is on. I'm going to be pressing the down key, which is the browse mode for NVDA, which means it's going to select every element on the page and see what happens.
68 Fahrenheit, 20 Celsius. Button show temperature tomorrow. 68 Fahrenheit, 20 Celsius.
As you can see, the screen reader is reading the text even though it is invisible. The reason for that is because we hit the element with opacity 0 and we did not use display none. So to fix that, what we have to do is use ARIA hidden. So I will just go inside my class and type ARIA hidden true. Now it is okay if we're using opacity 0 because we also added the ARIA hidden attribute. Now let's scan again using our screen reader. Okay, let's start scanning.
Button show temperature tomorrow.
There you go. Since we've hidden our element with ARIA hidden, we are unable to select it when it is invisible. Now let's try to make it appear. So I'm going to press spacebar, which activates elements with screen readers. Awesome. Our temperature is showing up. Now I want to select it with my screen reader, so I'm going to press the down arrow.
Button show temperature tomorrow. Button show temperature tomorrow.
Okay, now we are stuck because the screen reader is not reading the temperature, and the reason it's not reading the temperature is because we still have ARIA hidden inside our div. So what we have to do is once we show the content to the user, we also must remove the ARIA hidden. We either must remove it or set it to false. One note I must put is that the ARIA specification warns against using ARIA hidden because it says that it has some discrepancies in browsers. I tested it in the most modern and famous desktop browsers and I see no problems using it, but if you are experiencing problems with ARIA hidden false, just remove the attribute and the browser is probably going to show it anyways. So let's fix that. So inside our JavaScript, we are triggering the animation to show up when we click the button. So what we want to do is we want to, once we click the button, we want the animation to show up and the ARIA hidden to be set to false. So we want this to be visible to the screen readers. And to do that, I'm going to use the button text, which is the temperature. I'm going to press dot and I'm going to write set attribute ARIA hidden and I'm going to set it to false. Now let's test it again using our screen reader. Okay, let's select the button. Okay, and now let's activate it. And now let's select the text so the screen reader can read it aloud.
68 Fahrenheit, 20 Celsius.
Awesome, so it looks like it's working. Now let me remove this from here. And then let's try again.
Show temperature tomorrow button.
Activate. Now let's try to read it.
Button show temperature tomorrow.
And it's not working because ARIA hidden is set to true. One thing I want to mention is please be very, very careful when hiding visible elements with ARIA hidden true. Unless the element is decorative or redundant or there's a text equivalent nearby. Even though it is very tempting to hide them, it is very inaccessible for sighted users who are using a screen reader or speech recognition software to browse websites. Or if someone has broken both of their hands and they're using like Dragon, the speech recognition software, it's going to be very inaccessible for them if they can see the element, but their assistive technology cannot operate it. But that's ARIA hidden in a nutshell. Use it if you want to hide visible elements from the screen readers.